was kind of sitting where I could see like a nice fat, 80 yards one way, but then the other way it was like goldenrod for 60 yards, and it started to like lip downhill.
Yep.
So he had to kind of come up over a lip where
Yep.
he was coming. So I was like, oh, he's down there, and I gotta wait for him to come up. So I'll never forget just like him just getting louder and louder and louder.
And your heart's getting loud.
I'm like, and I'm telling myself like.
Welcome back to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails Podcast. I'm sitting here tonight in the Green Mountains with Nate Kapusta and Wyatt Gilman, a.k.a. Gilly.
Yes, sir.
Hey, boys, doing tonight?
Doing great.
Well.
Doing pretty well. That's good. So, Nate, you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do for work, and, your background?
Yeah, my name's Nate, and I've been hunting pretty hard, really, since I want to say 10, 11, and going with my dad, and it's just really a good family tradition. And I've been hunting all the way up through, never take a year off. I didn't really get into the turkeys until I was probably 15 or 16 is when I really started getting into turkey hunting, but deer.
And you're pretty passionate about that.
Oh, yeah.
You love turkey hunting.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
We get right into turkey hunting.
Get right into turkey hunting, and definitely I love going after those things.
We killed 6 of them this year.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Between
Not us, but like
people that you took and stuff.
took with us, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, they were all longbeards too, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And your family, you want to kind of talk a little bit about the tradition that I know your last name has a big hunting tradition, Kapusta, that name.
So my uncle, he basically lives down and on a big family farm, and we've gone crazy on it for the last 15 years,
Yep.
And my dad and him have always kind of challenged each other on who could shoot the bigger buck. And it was always my Uncle Mark always won.
Mm-hmm.
He always won.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that helped drive me, but I was always over there just listening to the stories. And my uncle, the rafters in his basement
Mm-hmm.
is filled with antlers, and a lot of them are spike horns,
Right,
3-pointers, 4-pointers,
Yep.
basket 6s, but they're just.
But that was the culture back in the day too.
Yeah.
That's what people were shooting.
That's what people were shooting,
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's just to hear the stories and to hear how he worked the land, and I know I really fed off that as a youngster, and
He was a very great hunter too.
it pushed me hard, just to
Yep.
figure out what the deer do.
Right.
Now, are you related to Bobcat?
No, I'm not really sure how
But he's got the same last
he
name
does the same last name.
in the same town.
Yeah,
That's
Right.
funny.
That's Kyle's grandfather, right?
yeah,
He's killed some whompers around
Oh, yeah.
here.
he has too.
Some beauties. I've heard some cool stories about him. But so basically the whole idea I had of this podcast is you've killed 3 really good Vermont bucks in the last 4 years?
4 years. Yeah.
Last 4 years, you've killed 3 really good ones. And I remember because you always hung around the farm, and I always would see you. You were buddies with my cousin.
Yeah.
And I always saw you around, and I knew you liked to hunt and stuff, but I didn't think you were super serious into it. And I remember you killed that first big buck, and I was like, dang, Nate got a big buck, I wonder, got lucky or whatever, got a big buck. And then you did it again.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap, you got another big buck. And then this last season, you killed a giant.
Just topped it.
And I was like, okay, Nate's got something figured out because, you're killing a big buck every year now. And that doesn't happen by accident.
No.
Not 3 in 4 years.
No, there's definitely a little something going on, I can classify, one was definitely some luck, but there's definitely.
But you put yourself.
You put yourself in the position. Right. You thought about that.
Right. Exactly. You go where you
and
think you should go. And
the most impressive was number 2, when I shot that one on the second day, because I went in. It was,
You just break down that whole like situation if you want.
Yes.
That second big one you got.
so that was like we had them. We have this like one spot,
You
and
got
it's,
fresh snow, right? Didn't you?
it's no. So we have this one spot down low, and there's 5 apple trees in a cluster, and these apple trees have been there for probably 20 plus years. You know,
They're old apple trees.
they're old apple trees.
Probably more than that. Probably 50 years.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
So I went down. I don't know. It's probably like 2018. It's probably when we really started getting these bucks going. But I made a mock scrape.
You were putting cameras out, you mean? Like 2018, that was the first year you started
Really going
putting
ham
cameras
with-
out.
We had, more than 5 out,
Yep.
instead of just 1 or 2 out here and there, and
Yep.
Right.
not having much effort into it. So anyways, we really started putting the cameras out, and we would get mock scrapes. And these turned into community scrapes.
Yep.
And I think this kind of helped, build up to
Right.
bring some of these deer back and challenge each other, on the dominant buck in the area.
Right.
So I fed off of where the heck are these things going?
Because you're just getting them coming through at night.
Middle of the night.
Middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
like, where are these things going? It's just a strict middle of the night spot. We really rarely get a daytime buck picture in this spot. We make it a food plot. It's not very big, but it's a nighttime photo every time.
Yep.
Usually the biggest one, middle of the night. So then it's, where does he go? Where does he end up?
Right. Exactly. That's everyone's question.
And that year we put in the stinking miles, and we couldn't find crap for sign. And this was an area that I actually hunted twice during bow season and didn't even see a deer. Didn't even see a deer. Didn't even have the sign until the first day of rifle.
Was this last year or the?
This is the second one. Everybody was hunting the other side. Was the one I call the separation.
The
of
other
this big
side
valley.
of the road? Or
No, so there's like a big valley that comes down the mountain, and we were all hunting the mountain. And basically, my dad, my uncle, and my cousin Nick, they were all over on the right-hand side.
Yep.
And it left me, all by myself to go over towards the right side is what I call it. And it's more hardwoody over there. There's more nuts. There's a pretty big ledge pinch and a couple hemlock pockets. And basically, the first day, I went a good ways and I got in between some nuts and some hemlocks. And there was a small swamp behind me. And it was just kind of like a good pinch point. I sat on the other side of this during bow season. And I never saw any deer, but the sign was telling me that, they were working this at some point. Deer are going through there.
And it's fairly high on the mountain.
Fairly high. This is the top. This
Yep.
is the top of the mountain.
Yep.
And I'm not, dipping that far off the top, but it's just,
It's just off the top.
just off the top.
Yep.
Yeah. And I actually saw the first day a spike horn, really tall spikes, and a doe. And they were just feeding the top, but I got to see how they were using that side and how they moved. And one of the deer that I saw, I spooked in the dark. I ran into it with the flashlight, and it went back towards the top. And I still saw it mid-morning in my travels. And it was looping its way around trying to cut down the mountain. So I was like, I'm just going to go along the side of the mountain a long ways and just see what I can see and see what I can find. And it was just, hemlock benches and shelves. And finally I came to a really good funnel that kind of cut down to a good shelf. And this is still the first day. I snuck my way down there, and I was finding saplings that were just ripped in half, and they're all coming uphill. And I was like, okay, if there's a buck,
Bunch of rubs.
there's a buck that's going to rip a sapling in half.
A good one.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
And I scoped out the flat pretty good, and I went, you know what? I'm going to come here tomorrow morning, first light in the dark. And
It was a long ways.
I'm going to see if I can beat him.
It was a long ways, right?
It was a long way. This is a good 2 miles from the truck.
Yep.
So I'm like, oh my God. So I talked myself into it. I got there in the dark.
Wait, hold on. Let me stop you there. See, that's huge. Just like getting enough gumption to get up
out
in that
there.
spot before daylight, because it's so easy to say with a rifle. It's like, just still hunt my way up through there.
Yeah.
I'll start at the truck at daylight. I'll just still.
Right.
But that's the difference maker right there. You got your butt up in there before it got daylight.
Yeah.
And that's what separated you there.
Yeah.
So anyways, go ahead.
So I made it. I don't know, 3/4 of the way there, and I actually ran in. It snowed that morning, and there was a good 1.5 inches maybe on the top. But I actually ran into a buck track, and he made a scrape like 2 feet off the trail I was taking to get in there,
Mhm.
and I almost took it, and I almost veered off.
Your mic, yeah, fix your mic. There you go. There you go.
There.
Yep.
So I almost took the buck track, and I almost veered off just to see what it was, because I wanted the experience in tracking bucks. And this is only the second day of rifle. This is 2021.
So you cut the buck track in the dark?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you cut the buck track in the dark.
Yeah.
And you wanted to take the track instead of going to the spot.
Yeah, and I was just
Okay.
like, I should really take this buck track, and just like see where it goes and figure it out, really. So I continued down the path I was going. I was like, I gotta continue going to the spot. I gotta go to the spot. I gotta go to the spot.
And it's still dark?
Still pitch black.
Okay, still pitch black.
Yeah, I'm like, there's saplings that are ripped in half coming up this valley. Like, I have to get there. And if I get there and there's a track coming up out of it, I'll take it. And I was telling myself, like, even if I get there and I sit till 9 or 10 and I don't like what I'm seeing, it's deader and dead, I'm going to come back and I'm going to take that buck track.
Yep.
So
Right,
I was like,
so you're
okay.
all right.
So finally I talked myself into I'm going to the spot that I found yesterday. So I finally get all the way there, and I'm cresting down into the bowl, and I start bumping turkeys out of the trees. And there had to have been like 30 of them. And they're all blowing out of the tree, clucking and flying down the mountain and going right down through the bowl I'm trying to hunt. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, I just blew it up, and it's still pitch black. And I'm like, well, I guess I might have a chance. Like, sometimes, if you let it settle down after a while, they really don't know what happened.
Well, a buck and rut won't really care either way.
Yeah, I guess that
If he's
too.
zombie walking, you never know. Yeah.
Right.
But anyways.
Like a coyote and like a bear will blow the turkeys out of a tree.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So I just I took it as like, hopefully they think I'm just, a predator lurking around and not.
Yeah.
So I dipped down in, tucked up into the ledges, and I could see the flat pretty well. And it was just in the first 30 minutes of daylight, really, maybe the first 45 minutes of daylight, but the turkeys were still collecting, and they were still gathering up in front of me, and all I could hear was turkeys. But the snow allowed me to see way down on this flat. And one of the turkeys that flew down the mountain, she was running up the log road, like something was bugging her along. And I'm like, oh, that turkey looks spooked down there. Like something's pushing her along. And she's clucking, like running towards the pack. And the other pack's calm as hell. Calm as heck, up on the up in the flat, and they're picking around in the oaks. And I'm like, okay, something's pushing her. So next thing you know, just at the corner of my eye, here he comes, strolling up the flat. And it's the same 8-pointer we've had on camera at midnight, 3 a.m.
Down on the bottom.
Down on the bottom. And now I'm way up on the top of the mountain.
Here he comes.
Strolling up this funnel. And I waited till he got to a nice, solid opening. And I gave him a quick Hail Mary. He never heard it. And I think I yelled at him, and he stopped. And I shot. And then he kind of like hunched up, and he went out of sight. And I knew it was like, I got to get down there. I'm one of those guys that I got to assess the situation
quick.
Yeah, I like to get down there.
I'm the same way.
Especially with the rifle,
Yeah.
So I got right down there, and I'm like, couldn't find his track, couldn't find his blood at first. I wasn't going far enough. I wasn't judging how far he actually was down there. The snow, I really poked him. So I finally find his track, and it's just blood, 2 feet wide, as far as I can see. It's like, okay, he went down. He's going down. Oh yeah, here we go. I don't think I made a phone call yet, but I slowly, poked along from there. Once I saw, the rear end of him, I made a quick phone call, like, yep, big buck down. I'm going to need some help. And I think it was my buddy Kyle. It was like one of the first persons I called. And I was like, I need you, because he wasn't hunting. I need you up here. I have a long ways to go, and I want it out by like noon,
Right.
Yep.
And I had to go like 200 yards up one side, across the top, and then it was just jungle on the back side. I ended up coming out. Thank God, one of our buddies big monster sugaring operation. He had access to get up in there on a 4-wheeler and
Yep. The
save
old
me.
Johnny.
But yeah,
You're in the middle of that country, huh?
yeah,
That's cool.
We were out there, but yeah, that was one where I really.
You did a lot of thinking.
A lot of people say
Yeah.
like, you find the first sign and you sit on it. You find the first sign and you sit on it. And I've done that for years, and I've always told myself like I've never seen it work. I've never sat on a green rub and had the buck come, like in the next
Right.
hour or 2 hours, come rolling around the corner. I don't know if I give up on it too early or what, but in this situation, there was green rubs. He was
He's in the area.
shredding trees.
Right.
Right. But see, what you did was you like reverse engineered that whole situation. You're like, oh, he's down in this bottom at night. I'm getting pictures of him at midnight, one in the morning.
Yeah.
And you talked yourself into going up on the mountain way up high, and you found a spot where a buck was coming up through, breaking tree branches and breaking saplings. And see, that's something, maybe a lot of guys wouldn't have picked up on that because he wasn't rubbing big trees.
Right.
Yep.
He was just busting up little ones. I've
Right.
seen it, and I'm sure you guys have.
Yep.
Big bucks will rub,
Little trees.
little trees and just twist the heck out of them. It just kind of depends on the buck.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I've seen bucks that like to rub trees the size of your waist.
And what I
But
thought was
then, it's just weird how they're
Right.
different. But
what I thought was really cool is that first day on the 2021 season, it got rainy like midday, and I ended up kind of doing a U back to the truck. Well, I was finding saplings that ripped in half, like up on top, 400 yards down the mountain. And I'm like, it's got to be the same buck,
Yeah.
like
because that's his
Yeah,
personality.
it seemed like it was his personality to just rip the thing in half, and it was all about the same level,
Yep.
And it was just he had character. He must have just been peed off. I don't know.
Well, he was a beautiful buck too.
That was-
beautiful rack. Was it an 8 or a 9?
So I took him to Middletown to get him scored, and the lady there was very generous. She gave me 9.
9
But,
points.
The 9th point is under an inch.
Is it?
So
Yeah. It's a ring hanger.
I always know he's an 8. He's a
He's
true
an
8. Yeah.
He's a beauty though.
But he scored 109 as,
109.
as an 8-pointer. Yep.
Yep. And that's a phenomenal Vermont buck.
Yes, it
You know,
is.
especially this area. That's like, did you ever have him aged?
That one I did not have age.
But
no.
I bet you he was all of 5.5.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah, easily.
He weighed 185. That was the
Yeah.
second day of rifle. So that would have been like November 16th,
Yep.
Something like that.
17th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a beauty. So so that was your second buck.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your first big one.
The first big one. That
Yeah.
was one of my favorites.
Yeah. Kind of run me through that whole situation.
So that was like, I was kind of talking about the mock scrape situation. We really got some things hot with the mock scrapes. And we never, ever had that kind of action before. We kind of just we never knew about that. We never tried it.
Right.
I think my cousin tried the dripper once before of like one of those fake scrapes. But we never just naturally, made the donut underneath the limb, We like to pee in them.
Yep. I do too. Yeah.
Put a camera on it, and you wouldn't believe the stinking action. And I used to have one sequence of photos on my phone. This is back in like 2018, but it was like we had a doe come through, and she sniffed the branch first. And I always say like, bingo, like, yep, it's activated.
Well, I think so. It's their orbital gland right in their eye.
Well, I think as
That's
soon
what
as
they're-
one deer touches
yeah.
it,
They rub their orbital gland on it or whatever, and then that's like, yep, you activated it. But I just wanted to cut in real quick and say it's amazing with mock scrapes is sometimes, especially like in our area, low deer density, they'll have scrapes, in places that are like high concentration areas, like edges of fields or, like an apple orchard or stuff like that. But, they won't have scrapes all over the place just because they just don't have the need to. But if you make a nice one for them,
yeah,
a lot of times they'll take to it.
yeah, even if
And
it's
they'll
for
love
just
it.
a couple days,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
if it's a couple days, a lot of times you'll get action.
Yes.
And I've noticed, like, if you want to see, like, the buck in the area, you want to find them. You go October, and you want to go, okay, there's, good chunk of hillside. I want to see the buck on it. And you find a nice flat.
Make a good
You
mock.
find an old scrape nearby, and you make a big old mock scrape. You're going to get 3 or 4 bucks.
You're right.
That are going to touch
They,
that.
they will walk out of their way
Yeah.
to work it.
Yeah.
And I think the more you make them, the better you get at them.
Yeah.
Because I know when I first started making them, I had like maybe 50% success rate with them.
Yeah.
50% would take on, the other 50 they wouldn't touch.
Yep.
But I think a lot of it has to do with the licking branch.
Yeah.
You have
Yep.
to have a super, super visible, no-brainer licking branch
Yep.
that buck can see 150 yards away.
Yeah, and he
go,
goes, whoa.
"Ooh."
Yeah.
You know, like, look at that big old branch. And I'm sure you can smell
Yep.
the pee in it after you pee.
A lot. I think it's the fresh dirt too. They
Oh, yeah, I'm
they love
sure.
that. They're
Right.
very curious, you know. But
Mhm.
I always say, like, just the one deer. As soon as you get one deer to sniff it, stick her head up in the licking branch. Even if it's a doe or a young buck, a fawn, boom, you know,
It's activated.
It's activated.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that thing's golden for a while.
Yeah.
And I have noticed there are places where you notice you throw in a mock scrape and the deer don't usually use it, but that's when you should use your focus to find the scrape nearby that they are using.
The one that they're using.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
because
it's-
they're not using your mock scrape, so they're using something nearby. You
Right.
know?
Yeah. It's just funny though how like I like to do them like way up high on like big geological pinches,
Yeah.
like places where the deer have to go through.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they've never had a scrape there, just because it's like a travel corridor. It's not like a high concentration area.
Yep.
But if you put a big scrape there, it's like the buck can't resist.
He can't resist. He has to go check it out.
He's got to go check it out. But then once they start working it, it starts to become like a community scrape.
Yeah.
Right.
But and you know, I think you have a better chance of killing a buck on a scrape like that's way back up in the mountains in a pinch
Yeah.
than you ever do down in the like high congregational areas
Yeah.
like a field or a
Right.
cut
Right.
or you know down in a little swamp
The
or whatever,
valleys,
the valleys
Right.
where the deer go at night
Right. And they can wander wherever
and they can
want.
that's a lot of nighttime
Yeah.
stuff.
So that's where we get. That's what I mean. Like the 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock photos. We get a lot of those year after year.
Right.
It's just they're hitting the mock scrapes.
Right.
That's when they're down in the valleys.
They're
It's middle of the night.
it's inventory
Yeah.
pictures.
Right.
That's what you're doing.
You gotta catch them.
You're just
going
checking
to
out
and
what's,
from, you
what's
know?
in the area, and then
Yeah.
you're trying to find it after that.
Exactly,
That's kinda
yeah.
how I think about it. But so we really 2018 it blew up. Like we were having 3-pointers and 4-pointers fighting over, and then the winner would go over and hit the mock scrape, and then go right back to button heads. You know, and this thing really blew up. And this is in one spot I like to call the 5 apple tree spot because there's literally 5 apple trees in a cluster.
No kidding.
And one big fat apple tree in the middle. It's like every 2 years it really does well, and if that one doesn't do well, the one next to it does pretty well, you know, the
Yep.
next year. But anyways, big licking branch. It's been worked well for 2 years. I think maybe this year we might have to bend a new one down.
Yep.
We're gonna use the same location.
Yep.
But they really go ham on it. They
Mhm.
love it. They tear it up. They fight over it. The young bucks. They
Right.
really sent this thing up, and it's gone
Yep.
on since like 2018,
Yep.
every single year. And we're
That's
we're
cool.
trying to find more locations like this, you know.
Right.
but So far, it's just this one
That one spot.
hot spot, this
Mhm.
one stinking hot spot. But that year, the buck I killed, the first big one, he made that scrape his own.
That was his.
And then it wasn't until like a 4-pointer and a 3-pointer and a spike horn tried to make it theirs first until he came one night and was just tore it up. And he came like 4 nights in a row. And then it was like he took like a week off, and then it was just it was quite steady.
Yep.
And he was hammering that scrape like every other night for a
Mhm.
while. This is mid to end of October.
Yep.
And we're like, okay, like we got him fired up. And this is a scrape we made, and that was always something that was cool to me. It's like I made that with a stick.
Oh yeah.
Didn't put my scent in it other than my pee, and then
Yep.
got
Now the
out of
Bucks are
there.
using it.
Now the Bucks are
Yeah.
hammering it like it's their own.
Yep.
Yeah. That deer, that night I killed him, it was snowing. We had a good 2-inch, 3-inch snowstorm. He was bedded in some hemlocks, like 100 yards from our mock scrape.
Yep.
And earlier in the day, this is probably like 2:45, I went all the way to the base of the mountain, cut way up the mountain, and got up on some flats, and was just looking for tracks, really.
Yeah.
I didn't have any focus on, anything down low. I was focused on trying to get up the
Right.
mountain as high as I could, just going. My cousin, he came in a little later than I did. He was working a bank not far from our mock scrape, and up jumped the buck. And the buck, he went down the hill. My cousin fired at him, gave him a good warning shot. Might have cut a hair or two, but
Yep.
he never hit it. So this deer had all magicalness, cuts down, cuts up the bank.
Yep.
Instead of going into this huge bedding area that he could have gone into. He ends up cutting up, goes through the wide open hardwoods, cuts across a field, a CRP field, goes all the way to the foot of the mountain, and basically follows my boot prints up the mountain. And I'm telling my cousin to dog this thing the whole time. Like, you already shot at it. You know,
Get on
like,
it, yeah.
Get on it. Get on it. Get on it. Get on it. At least see where he's going.
Yep.
Then if you got to take, 20 minutes after, just get a direction, please.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
So he's like, he's in your boot prints on the stinking mountain. So at this point, I'm like stopping what I'm doing. Like,
Yep.
I thought this buck was history.
Yeah.
He went down into the bedding area because he was down in the valley at that point. But no, he came right up the mountain, basically following my boot prints. And I was like, at that point, like, which way do I go? I'm trying to just get to a spot where I can see the best, And I ended up catching him way the hell down. He was coming up through the hemlocks. And he went through one opening. I saw 3 one side, and I was like, oh, big buck.
Yep.
Buck.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in a nice opening. Squeezed the trigger, bang. Buck went about 3 feet, stopped. I go, what the heck happened? Boom! Shoot again. Then he disappeared out of sight, and I see him flop once down over the hill. And I was like, uh-oh, I hit him, but I think it might be high. And then I hear him roar. That old, you spined him roar,
Yep. Yep.
So I hurried right over there, and I put the final shot into him, but it was just, I never thought, we got photos and photos and photos of this deer. I never just thought how wide and how big he was. He was 22 inches wide.
Yeah, no, he was a giant.
From outside to outside.
Yeah.
Just going down and seeing him, it was just like, I did this. Like, holy
That
crap.
was your first big one.
And I was, where he was, it was like, I did great because I was walking up the funnel, up the mountain. And that was like, one of the main funnels that they were using, to get out of Dodge if they were to go up the mountain. And I happened to be standing on it, and I already walked up it, basically.
You can call it luck, but you chose to stand there, man.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, do I drop down? Do I go 100 yards right? Do I go 100 yards left? Like, where is he going? And then it was just like me telling my cousin to dog this thing. It's teamwork, A lot of people kill bucks and teamwork, Yeah. Where is this thing? Where's he headed? You know? Oh, he's going up your boot prints. Kind of helped me decide. Don't move too far, but get to a spot where you can see well.
Yeah. What did he weigh, Nate?
That one weighed 194.
194. Oh, he was a big deer. I remember. I don't know. We were hunting. Gilly and I were hunting together that day somewheres.
I ended up pulling into your house.
Yeah,
and showing you.
You pulled up in that night. I don't know where we were that day. We were somewhere on snow though.
We're always on an adventure.
Actually, you know what?
I'll shoot that for sure.
Actually, no. Would that have been the one that I gave the haircut? Was that day?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, that was
It was fresh
22.
snow.
That was 20. No,
Maggie got
19.
one the day that
was
I
19.
gave that one a haircut.
yeah, that was in 19. You shot yours. That one was 21.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Mm.
Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah, but I remember you pulled in and you had that thing in the back of the truck, and I went out there and I was like, whoa,
Yeah,
that's a big deer, because we don't get them around this
No.
area over 175 very often.
No, exactly.
Like if you go to the board over in Middletown here, there's maybe 3 or 4 bucks all rifle season that are up over like 175.
Yeah.
yeah.
And they're like definitely outliers.
Yeah.
A lot of our big bucks around here are like 160.
I've actually, I don't want, not to,
165.
the Middletown, that buck
Yeah.
pool they got there. I won it the last 2 years in a row with a 185-pound buck.
No
That
kidding.
tells you it's anything. Of course, they do a weight in a buck pool.
Yeah,
unless
yeah.
it's a tie, then you go by horns.
That in this area, that's a buck that wins
Yeah.
a buck pool.
Yeah.
Is
Mhm.
185.
I won the buck pool 2 years in a row.
Yep,
These
that's-
last 2 years in a row.
that's
for the
phenomenal.
Middletown Springs pool, buck pool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, with a 185-pound deer.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's funny. But
That's like you said. That's the caliber. Like that's what
that's
we get
what
for
we
weight.
get.
Right, exactly.
That's what we get
for
in
weight.
this area, and it's all dependent
That's big
on
weight.
the area. But yeah, this area for sure. And a lot of this whole stretch of Vermont's that way.
Yeah.
We're more in the Taconics, I'd call it. So we have definitely a different
And there's
kind of deer. Like our deer is more like I would call more of like a Pennsylvania type deer.
yeah.
And it's funny because in Vermont there are even close to us a different kind of deer, like a different breed almost. It seems like where they get heavier, and they live in the more sprucey tops.
The spruces, those are your bigger deer.
Those are your bigger deer.
And somehow turn into cows.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can break that down in areas that you're hunting, because that's how I like to find big deer. I just try to look at the history of what's been shot there, talk to some old timers, say, hey, what ridges do they get 200s off? And like they'll tell you, a lot of older guys will tell you that, oh, my uncle shot one there, 220 or whatever, and then you can start to break down where the big buck areas are,
where they're traveling and where people have really laid them down. That was kind of my second buck. Ended up being one of my uncle's famous spots, and he tipped over a lot of bucks in it.
Did he?
And he found that spot from another old guy.
Yep.
Who killed a lot of bucks in that prior to him, and it was just kind of like, I didn't even know I was in it at that point,
No kidding.
And I ended up killing that second big one in it, and it felt cool to know, I was in a legendary deer hunting spot, where a lot of bucks have fallen, and I did it as well, just to put another gut pile out there,
No, it's
the other guys have done years past.
It's cool. I feel like our area has such a rich hunting heritage.
Oh yeah.
I can tell you, on all these ridges, where all the old boys used to hunt, where they used to kill all their bucks. Yeah. It's such a cool area to kind of grow up in, liking hunting because.
Right. Exactly.
You know what? It's probably like that everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. It's just it is, but it's just cool to know the history and stuff. But
exactly.
And I think back in the day, old boys didn't really travel much. They just hunted the same ridge.
Well, I think they still kind of do it now. The biggest buck being a 185-pound buck out of the Middletown store for 2 years in a row. Nobody went out of their way to go track a 200-pound monster.
No.
And was entered into that buck pool. They would have stole that. They would have completely stole that from me.
Right. No, guys, a lot of guys don't go far. Yeah. From their house. Yeah, exactly. And I don't blame them.
I beat the locals, 2 years in a row. And I'm basically a local,
You are, yeah. You hunt right here.
I'm close enough to Middletown Springs, to consider myself hunting local country,
Yep.
And my grandfather, back when he hunted, before I got into the hunting accident he was in, he was just walking the snowmobile trail, and he ended up going up and over and around the other side of the mountain, and he's walking on the snowmobile trail, and he said this giant 8-pointer stepped out in front of him. He's like, nope. So he said, today's your lucky day. I ain't shooting you. I ain't dragging you up over that mountain. He watched him. He let him go. But it's just like.
Right.
So
everybody's different.
Right.
Yeah, everybody has their little kicks, too, on, what they do every year, and, what brings you.
The luck.
Everybody has to. You have your days where, you don't even see a squirrel, you know, and you're like, the luck. And Mother Nature wasn't on my side today. I didn't even see a freaking.
I mean, that's a big conversation too about luck,
Well, staying motivated is the hardest thing. I think a lot of people just quit.
Well, all three of the big bucks I've killed have been with my grandfather's 1908 Mauser action Springfield 30-06.
That's badass, yeah.
And that was just
awesome, man.
Every year I tell myself I'm gonna get this gun refinished. I'm gonna throw it in the gun cabinet.
Never use it
again. But then it's well, I tipped, that one over last year with it, so it's
you're never gonna get that thing redone.
I don't think I'm just gonna wear the thing out.
Just keep using it.
It's heavier than heck. Hey, I finally got a nice scope on it though, but I just can't. I don't think I'll ever be able to put it down now. It's bolt action, isn't it? I feel dangerous with it. You just feel
you got the confidence.
You got the confidence. You feel like that's your lucky weapon, and you put me out there, you're gonna get the job done, and if it's couple days or whatever it takes.
It's so funny that you bring that up because I have 2 deer rifles. I have a 7600 with a low powered scope.
Yep.
And then I have a 7600 with peep sight.
Yep.
And the one the one that I have my scope on. Yeah, I know. I named it Lucy. I don't know why, but I have killed a ton of bucks with that gun. And I like the peep gun. It's a 35 Whalen.
Yeah.
And I still haven't killed a buck with it. But, I'll carry it every once in a while.
The advantages it's given you.
You killed that one, didn't you?
No, that was an 06. Oh. I traded that one.
The advantage the peep sight's given you, and you want to take it.
Yeah, and I've killed a bunch of bucks now with or not a bunch, but a couple with the
Skinner on the muzzleloader.
on the muzzleloader.
Yeah.
It's not a Skinner. They make them. The Woodman Arms.
Oh yeah.
They make their own peeps.
Oh,
Like
nice,
I've killed deer with the peep, and like I killed a nice buck with a peep gun, a 30-06 peep gun. But it's just like that old 06 that I've had my whole life. Like
It's worn perfect.
it's worn. Like I just feel like that thing just.
Yeah.
It's funny how you get with your gun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I feel like that's a conversation that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah,
At least
no.
on podcasts. It is so true. It's like you got this thing and it's like, man.
You just
Like
love your gun.
I just love that thing. Like I've killed more, you know.
I always make jokes. I name mine Gloria, and I try to make her sing, every year at least once,
Right.
If it's at a coyote, luckily, it's been a buck every year for quite a while now.
So we talked about your first 2 big bucks, and now this last buck you killed was the biggest.
The biggest.
Biggest antler wise.
Yeah.
And you can go back as far as you want. Give me all the details on all the history you had with this buck.
This buck. So
and kind of run us all through it.
this guy, I called him King Louie for a while last year, and that one kind of stuck for a while because
King Louie.
King Louis. Yeah. So he hung out in the lowlands, down low, back lawn, just private
all
land, landlocked.
Yep.
He would show up in some guy's, rich person's back lawn. They don't hunt, and he's out there chewing on their. And he grew up in like a neighborhood where they don't hunt, and it's landlocked and it's thick. And if you could hunt it, a lot of the guys that can hunt it, they're not trying hard because it's so thick.
They're just sitting.
They're just sitting, yeah. And he literally had acres to himself for years and years and years. And there's these guys that had a lease. They were hunting basically where this buck was living, and they haven't been able to hunt it for a couple of years. And I think that's really where he was.
So wait, it was a lease where guys were hunting, but then the lease got taken away?
He's got taken away. So now this buck's kind of been.
So now nobody can hunt it.
Nobody's hunting that. And the landowner, I think they stunk it up with them. So the landowner doesn't want anybody in there. And it's been 3 years now. I'm sure, down the road, somebody could probably release it.
Yeah.
But anyways, for the last remaining 3 years, it's just been the deer just been in there doing their own thing. Nobody can hunt it, and we're lucky enough to border the edge of basically a chunk of this. And where this buck was living, there was a nice family, and they were allowing my cousin to mow their lawn, basically. And he threw a camera out behind their house. They owned quite a bit. And we were getting them
on their lawn,
basically like on their back lawn, and it was just like we can't hunt them here. And they were hunting, they knew about them. Of course, they wanted to kill them, but they were more like rifle season hunters. And really, their neighbors didn't hunt. That deer just had it made. He could just, if he got pressure in one little block of woods, he could just cross the road, and he was behind the next person's house. And like I said, a lot of those people were not hunters. And he was safe. That's where he was for years. And we got him we got 2 photos of him last year that really stuck out. Or 2 years ago, I should say.
When he was an 8-pointer.
When he was an 8-pointer. And he was wicked wide. And it was actually the landowner that my cousin was mowing for. They had just a camera out back, and they got a photo of him. And he was well out past the years. Like 23, 24 inches wide, big 8-pointer with it looked like a crab claw starting to form on the end. And that was like, okay, began our focus on like
that deer.
There's a mega giant in the area, and like we should probably, if it's asking permission to get closer to him, or just trying to figure out he's got to come out of there at some point. Where does he go?
Right.
So we start really pounding the onyx and stuff, and we ended up finding a couple little chunks of public that we could kind of get close to him on. And like I said, we have the access to where we're lucky enough to border the other end of this lease property. But this is a mile down the road, like big block of woods. You could drive all the way up and around, but it's, as the crow flies, it's really not that far from where he was. So it was possible. So we hammered the cameras, and we never really got him. We had like one photo of him early season in some goldenrod, and you can just see his really tall tines. But it wasn't until like October we actually got him on our end. He's chasing doe,
Yep.
And I remember my cousin like freaked out. He like called me right up, like, you won't believe who took a visit on our side. Like, you won't believe it. And we were freaking out, like, okay, it's possible. Like,
Yeah.
he comes over here, even though it's one time, like
Right.
it can be done.
Yep.
This thing can be killed from our side.
Yep.
We don't have to worry about, dealing with asking landowners permission or buying out a leased property to get closer to this thing,
Yep.
We can hunt our own side, and he will eventually make it here as long as we do the right things.
Yep.
So last year, food plot, huge. We put in like a 3-acre food plot. We went ham, all clover. Most of it was clover. There was an apple tree down there. It was really dying off. We pruned it out.
Yep.
And it really brought a lot of dough down low on our side where we got them during the muzzleloader.
Yep.
And like I said before, talking to you before, this deer, like, he really stayed over on his side and never, ever came over. He only had that one moment where he slipped over and muzzleloaded the year prior. So it's not like we were getting him, like, nonstop on camera.
Mm-hmm.
But just a photo here and there on their back lawn a mile down the road. So with the food plots and the apple tree pruning,
Yep.
we increased the deer herd over on our side a little bit better.
The
And
doe herd was
the doe
getting
herd,
strong.
yeah.
Yep.
And we just improved the overall deer habitat in a place that they didn't have that really
Before.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't know if it really played a good toll and helped pulling them over, but it was a night this year. I slipped down in there and I ended up jumping
Was
a
it
deer.
like the first weekend?
So this is the first week of rifle.
So it was the first day, right?
No. This is on a Thursday. when we
Okay.
shot 'em.
Thursday. Oh, okay.
So it was a Wednesday night. I took
Yep.
a trip down on this lower parcel, and I knew that there's a possibility he could come over, but it was like
Still
it was
shot in the dark.
Shot in the dark. It was like
Yep.
the last buck, and he wasn't coming until muzzleloader. At least we thought, because that's what we did the year before. And I went down there. I don't know. It was a Wednesday night in the first week this year, and I split off from my cousin. He kind of went one way, and I went the other way, and we were more kind of doing like a survey, as we like to call it. I might have still hunted the whole night,
Yep.
and just kind of stood in spots where I could see really good,
Right.
just trying to see if the deer are moving down there.
You were scouting.
Yeah, basically.
You were scouting.
Yeah. And I crested on the top of a hill, and I jumped a buck with a doe, and they come blowing out of a ravine, and I was on the top of the hill, and by the time I finally got a good glimpse of them, and I realized, like, that's a buck and a doe, they stopped on the edge of, like, some hemlocks, and they were 50, 60 yards away. And I remember this buck. All you see was his rump. He's angled straight away from me with his head cocked around. I remember this big W on one side and counting just 3 points right away as soon as I had him in the scope. Like, ooh, big buck.
Yep.
I settled right on his noggin. And I was like, I'm gonna shoot him.
Right.
And I was like, no, I don't like it. I don't like it. And his butt, he kind of had a decent sized tree in line with his butt. I really like the best shot I had. The best shot I had was his head, and I didn't do it. And he, just as fast as I told myself, like, no, I don't want to shoot him in the head. Maybe he'll step forward. He literally took 2 bounds, straight over the hill, gone. Never before seen again.
Dang.
So he goes down into some bedding area, and I'm like, at this point, like, oh no, like that was my chance, you know, like to shoot a nice buck. So I circled all the way around the left-hand side of the bedding area, and if there was I don't know, ½ inch of snow on the ground. And it was showing up in some of the open areas, and it
Right.
wasn't stuck in the thick area. So I was like basically blowing right out through the open hardwoods. Like, did they come out of the bedding area? Did they come out of the bedding area? And I wrapped basically 180 degrees around this bedding area. Never found his track. Right, the doe he was with.
Yep.
I was like, they're still in there. They're still in there.
It's a really thick spot.
It's a good
Really thick.
like 250.
It's like rabbit country.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Literally.
nasty. It's nasty, and they're in there, and they know, like, they can hear everything coming in. All 4
Right.
sides of them.
They're safe.
They're safe.
Yeah.
So I do a 180 around. I'm gonna come back, and I call my cousin Nick, and I'm like, you need to get to the other side of this thicket, and kind of do a little 180 over there and see what you see. Comes back calls me back or whatever. Nothing.
Yep.
They haven't spit out I was like, maybe they're gonna just sit in there until dark, and then they'll come out of the bedding area. Like we might have just boogered it, but I was letting them know at this point, like there's a buck in there. It's a nice one. I saw 3 points on one side. Like,
Yep.
he's a shooter for sure.
Right, that's when you called me and you're like, I don't know what to do, Gilly. I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
I was like,
literally.
I was like, I'd get back down in there first
so,
light,
So this is the best part, where me and my cousin split off. We kind of have a decent walking trail that we cleared out to get down in where we were hunting. We weren't really hunting the food plot. We were just hunting
The bedding area.
the woods, and a lot of it's hickory nuts. We're low enough where a lot of it's hickory nuts, really, is what they're chewing on. Last year, we didn't really have a lot of good nuts, and I feel like the hickory nuts were one of their last, resorts.
So they were eating the hickories
They were
during
chewing
deer
on the
season.
hickory, yeah.
So around here, usually,
Yeah.
they won't hit the hickories until like January because they, for some reason, like you just said, that's their last nut they eat.
Yeah.
But I remember, like right on my parents' lawn, there's a bitter walnut, which is like a hickory, I think.
Right.
Most squirrels hammer those things. They're like big, like they have the green husk on them, kind of.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yep.
We have a ton of those around here. And anyways, that one big one on the lawn, every year, January, February, all the deer would show up, start hammering those nuts. I think they'd clean the acorns first or whatever. But you're saying last year there was no acorns.
I think
so
they were pounding the hickories early. Yeah.
And I never made that connection last year. That could have been that could have been huge.
And this was like, they've already seen snow a couple times at this point, and it wasn't much. It was still crust, but it was probably enough to shock them, like, yo, we have nuts down here. It's not all
the next best thing.
The next best thing. And there was no acorns in the mountain.
No.
It's all old, rotten nuts from years past. It's pretty sad. Beech nuts never came in. They literally had grass, hickory nuts, and
that was it.
woody browse.
Yeah, woody browse.
Whatever the heck they eat,
Whatever they could find.
Dude, hemlock. They were eating hemlock last year during rifle season.
Yeah, I did see that. I tracked
Which
some
is
deer
crazy.
around one of the first snows we got. They pounded this fallen hemlock branch. Pounded it.
You don't see that
was
till March.
down
usually.
low. Down low. Yeah.
But anyways, continue.
So I think these deer, they were headed up into the hickories, and then I stopped them. Well, boogered them back down into the bedding. They were coming up.
Yeah.
But anyways, where we split off initially for the night, to just, you go right, I go left, like, good luck to you. We get back there, and it is just big fat scrape right in the middle of the walking trail. 10 yards up the walking trail, another big scrape. And this wasn't there 2 hours ago.
It just was made.
And when I was like, the buck I jumped, I literally pushed him back in the bedding area. He didn't know where we came in.
Right.
He boogered out. He still wanted to go the same direction he wanted to go. And there was 5, 6 other deer with those 2 deer. All scraped up. And we were like, okay, the deer are down here. So it was like a no-brainer next morning.
Getting in there.
Getting back in there. In the dark.
In the dark.
Early.
Yep.
So now, remember I said there was snow. There's a crush of snow. So next morning, I go to take off nice and early to get down in there. And that snow is like glass.
Crunch.
I'm like, well, there's no way I'm going to make it down there sneakily. Like, there's no way I'm going to sneak down in there.
The
Grunt
best thing
tube.
to do is just walk.
Yep.
Grunt tube literally hanging out of my mouth.
Yep.
I walked.
Oh,
crunch,
yeah.
crunch, crunch, crunch. Never batted. I actually blew multiple deer out in the dark.
Yep.
They allowed me to get decently close because I was grunting.
Yep.
But I think that allowed me to get down in there. I walked all the way. Not a four-wheeler was turned on. Like, my truck was parked,
Yep.
Headlamp, I like to run the green lights,
Yep.
Tooting on the grunt tube all the way down in there, just disturbing it as little as possible in the dark.
That's dangerously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Got
Like, that's
right down
good.
in there, and
That's what you do.
I shot from those 2 scrapes from the night before.
Yep.
Literally in the walking trail, and I sat so I could see like around the corner,
Yep.
basically. But it was just, I was in between 2 bedding areas, is what it was.
Yep.
And it was first 45 minutes. I could hear him coming from just hundreds
That
of
was the
yards
day we
out.
went, remember?
Yep. It was crunchies.
It was like you could hear yourself echoing through the woods. It's like, oh my, you can't track a deer in this.
I knew
There's no
if,
way.
if I was to go still hunting, I would have had to wait for it to soften up.
Yep.
Or if I'm just going to sit there and listen,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
Take a few steps, listen, take a few steps.
But you were
listen.
hanging on the scrapes.
I was hanging on the scrapes. I sat. It was a fallen log, and I kind of like was sitting on the fallen log. I really didn't have a very good cover backrest or anything. Just kind of had the rifle leaned up. But I was gonna sit for the first 45 minutes to an hour.
Yep.
With my eyes, with the visual on those two scrapes,
Yep.
like see what comes by. But
Yep.
yeah, it was no more than the first 20 minutes. I could see pretty decently well. You could just hear him. Or a deer coming from a long ways away, just, and then he'd stop, you know, and he'd stop, and it was just, there's something over there, and it's big, and it's crunching, it's not a squirrel, and it was early, and eventually it got louder and louder, and it was just a steady pace, and it's like, yeah, that's a deer, you know, and he's just on the move, he's walking this way.
Yep.
And it took a while, and eventually, I was kind of sitting where I could see like a nice fat, 80 yards one way, but then the other way it was like goldenrod for 60 yards, and it started to like lip downhill.
Yep.
So he had to kind of come up over a lip where
Yep.
he was coming. So I was like, oh, he's down there, and I gotta wait for him to come up. So I'll never forget just like him just getting louder and louder and louder.
And your heart's getting
And
loud.
I'm like, and I'm telling myself like it's a deer and it's
Yeah.
all by itself, and I'm like, that's always a great sign. Like it's a buck and he's cruising and he's looking,
Mm-hmm.
and I love a deer by himself.
Yep.
I don't know why, but
Yep.
I always love deer by himself. Most bucks are by themselves when you
Yep.
shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, yep, here we go. This is my chance,
Yep.
like here we go. And I'll never forget. It came up over the hill, and I could just see his horns, and he was pretty much like head still in the goldenrod.
Yep.
I remember seeing this as G2s, or a G2 and a G3 on his, which been his right side, and just being like, oh, it's big, like. And I thought it was just a big buck we've never gotten on camera. I didn't even really care.
You didn't connect the dots.
I didn't connect the dots
No.
that it was him,
Yep.
but that it was King Louie is what I was calling him that morning. But it was just like big buck, and he literally gets to the top of the hill just enough where I could see most of the front of his body, and I'm like about ready to squeeze the trigger on him. He comes to a complete stop, and he throws his head up into the branch, and he starts ripping up this scrape right in front of me, and I just like let it happen for like 12 or 15 seconds to like,
which
do I
is an eternity.
yeah, eternity.
Right, yeah.
And he's just tearing the scrape up. And finally, he just like sticks his head out. And he's just like surveying the land, like, where do I go next? And all
Yeah.
I could think about was the buck the night before and me not shooting it. Not shooting it because I didn't like the headshot. Well, this time, this buck was giving me some neck, So I just like buried it in on his neck. And I'm like, this is all I need. And I'm not giving up this opportunity.
Right.
And I squeezed right off on his neck, and he dropped like a sack of potatoes. And honestly, that sometimes scares me more than a deer that takes off running that looks hurt,
Right. I've
'Cause
shot one that dropped in his tracks and got away.
I didn't even see it drop. So I jumped right up, threw another shell in, and I'm running, panic mode, like, no, And next thing you know, he's on the ground kicking, and I ended up putting one more in him because he
You
seemed
gotta.
pretty lively.
That's
But
insurance right
after
there.
it all just like set in, and then I saw the crab claw, and then the split brow tines, and I'm like, it's him.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
King Louis, and he's a mile down the road. Like, what the heck are you doing
King
down?
Louis.
Oh, I just lost it.
Oh
Absolutely
my
lost
gosh.
it. Like, what are you doing down here? So, lo and behold, we learned that there was 14 doe below this field we were basically hunting below, the night before when I almost shot that one in the head.
Mm-hmm.
So we were just like in a mass. The deer were in there. is
You
all
were
I gotta say.
Yeah.
you were in the pocket.
We were in the
Yes,
pocket.
You were in the
yeah.
pocket.
So-
There was
Yep.
no
and
better.
we didn't even know that. It's like that was just somebody that told us that drove by and we're like, yo, like there was 14 deer in this field, Wednesday night, and I'm like, I was below that, a couple hundred yards. I
Yep.
didn't see any of those 14 deer.
Yep.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, we were in the pocket.
Yeah, you were in the pocket. I mean, that was probably the best spot within 20 miles of here.
We had a no-brow 6-pointer down there that was really active, and that was honestly the buck that I thought I saw the night before.
And it could have been.
It really could have been.
It could have
really
been.
could have been.
Yeah, and that was, man, what a beautiful buck. How many points did he have?
So they gave me 11 at the store, and that
Yep.
newer story where the lady's very generous.
Yep.
But he's a 10 scoreable points, but they scored him 134 and 2/8 for non-typical and 131 for typical.
Oh, man.
But yeah,
Giant, dude. I remember I came and looked at him that night, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
What a buck.
Yeah. No,
What a smasher. I mean, for this town, that's arguably one of the bigger antlered bucks probably ever shot in this town.
And then it was funny to see how many people had him on camera.
Oh,
'Cause
everyone.
he
dude.
was
He was
so
all over the town.
landlocked.
He was in the. Didn't the town post him in their,
Yeah, he made like the
news
Yeah.
article?
He
of
made
the town.
like the town gazette.
He literally did.
yeah. Somebody was
Someone
like,
posted
He
him
was
in
a
there.
local legend.
Yeah,
Little
literally.
King Louie.
He was King Louis.
yeah, he was King Louis. He was King Louis.
You killed him.
King Louis.
Man. And he was a legendary buck.
Yeah, it was just.
I literally,
a
I have
good story.
talked to like 5 different guys. They're like, you see that buck that Kapusta kid shot last year? I had him on camera for 3 years. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that a lot, you know, but it's
He's a
just,
cool buck with the split brows and everything.
It's
yeah.
just funny how he just.
and okay.
They're a creature of random. Like, they do whatever the heck they want. Wherever the deer
Right,
are,
right,
they're
right.
gonna
But-
function.
I have something I got to say about this whole thing is, in years there was acorns, you were hunting up on the mountain.
Yes, pounding it.
And
Never.
he was
I
never
have
up there.
very little time down in this area.
Yeah, he was-
That's okay.
Very
So
little time
that's
down this
where I'm
area.
going with this.
Yeah.
Even if there was acorns, he still wouldn't go up there.
Yeah.
He still hung down in that rabbit country
Yeah.
and chewed on bitter walnuts, probably.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what he did.
Yeah.
And if there was acorns last year, you probably wouldn't have killed him because you would have been on another good buck up on the mountain.
Yeah. I would have had total focus somewhere else, and I would have never.
And you wouldn't have killed him. But it was just, it took that special year with no nuts for you to get down in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just amazing. I mean, that buck, he could have lived out his entire life down there probably and died
Living
of
in
old
rabbit
age.
country.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
literally. It's
rabbit
just
country.
buckthorn and like oversized. What do they
And that's
call
why
those?
he got that big.
Those giant ferns is what I love.
It's so thick down there. It's
And
crazy.
see, he was a special buck.
He loved
because
the big
king-
ferns.
He
was King Louis.
He was King
He's
Louis.
King Louis.
Yeah, he lived down in the rabbit brush and
Right.
just made the town gazette and showed up on everybody's game cameras and drove them nuts. Everybody probably thought he was way up on that mountain. He was way down in there in that brush.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
You
there's
know?
some thick, nasty he was living in. I mean, almost.
That's why he's got chocolate horns.
Well, I shot a 6-pointer. Me and Gilly, I called it the tag team buck. It's the one I stuck an arrow in, and Gilly stuck an arrow in as well.
Yeah.
That was a pretty funny story on that.
That was a
one.
nice buck too.
We were
That
sitting like
157 6-pointer. I
Yeah.
never got that one scored, but that one was pretty
He's a nice buck too.
pretty comical story. But anyways, he took us down kind of in this area, and it's like we got to kind of see like what most of the
looked
country that we can't even access looks like down there. And Gilly's been down to Ohio a couple times, and he's like, you can't move, and the thorns are so big.
Yep.
like it's just you
it's like
can't.
mini Ohio down there.
It's bad.
Yeah, like
it's
a mini.
bad.
Yeah,
But you
Literally.
even tell yourself like, how can a deer go through this? But
Right.
That's
they're
what
in
they
there,
love, though. They
They're-
love that
they're-
shit.
They're in there.
they're in there, and it's interesting. Did you ever find any rubs you think that he made?
It was really hard to tell. A lot of times, if we found one, it seemed like it was wicked old, but we never found like a big solid tree that was
No.
just ripped.
You
fresh.
probably wouldn't have either.
I think they were in on that lease land in his own.
Either
turf.
that or he didn't rub
He
big
didn't
trees.
rub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
He
think
just
he had the
rubbed brush.
competition. He never had big competition.
No, but I mean, and then some bucks, that's literally just a personality. Even if there's 10 other bucks in the area, they still won't rub trees. Like, you know, one of the
Yeah.
biggest Vermont bucks I ever hunted, I mean, I worked my butt off for 3 years to find this buck sign, and I only found one big rub of him. And I was getting him daylight pictures, like he was living there, and
Yeah.
he just didn't rub trees.
No.
Yeah.
You know, and some bucks will literally go out of their way to rip up every single tree they walk by. It's just,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just the
All
personality.
territorial. Yeah, their personality.
No kidding. Well, 3 big bucks. And you want to run through your big 6-point with the bow?
Oh, yeah.
Because that technically, was that the 1 year you didn't get a big one?
That was the 1 year. So I tagged it.
So you've really got 4 good ones in 4 years.
yeah, technically I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he shot the big one and then he shot that one with the ball. In between his first and second big one.
Yeah. So I shot the first big one, and then
then
I
he shot
shot
the one with the ball.
and then I
Yeah,
shot
so
his last
give me
two.
that
So-
story of that.
So
That's 6. That was a beautiful buck.
I went 157 6-pointer Vermont. I was very pleased with that.
Yeah.
Although it took a tag team effort. I had the
Dude, that's what we're here for.
yeah, that's what we're here for.
And
I
the
worked on
odds
same
of it
day.
to walk by me,
Yeah.
dude, we were 800 yards away from each
Yeah.
other.
No, I know.
For it to walk by me at 30 yards,
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna watch it walk
limping away
I saw
too.
it limping,
Like
I
it's
said-
no brainer.
Gotta shoot.
I
Yep.
didn't even do the old merp at it either. I just
And
Hail
hey-
Married a shot at it. Didn't even know the yardage. Hail Married it, and I stuck it right in the net.
So that was bow
This-
season. It's tough.
Mhm.
I have a climber I like to run, but I haven't adapted the sticks yet. I'm starting to work on that.
Yep.
Saddle.
The saddle.
You haven't even tried one, have you?
I've tested one out.
You have?
So back to what I do for work is I went to lineman school and I'm a fiber optic splicer now, but I'm comfortable with height, so I could totally do the sticks. I just got to get myself to. It's all in the time. I'm
Just
afraid.
come up and try my saddle or his saddle.
I've always just been afraid of like how hot and sweaty am I gonna get? You know, getting up there, then am I gonna stink? You know, and it was just all like.
Mhm.
It's not
I just
bad.
gotta do it,
It's
you know.
so
I
easy.
just gotta do
and
it.
you gotta trust your saddle.
The big one
That's
was
the biggest thing.
when I got a lone wolf climber. I've been running for the last couple of years, and I'm decently good at getting up the tree with it pretty fast now. It's all an experience. You just gotta
In
test your equipment and
my
do
opinion,
it. You know,
the saddle is a lot safer than a climber.
That is true, and you can get in any tree.
Yes.
you can get in
You
any
can get
tree.
in any tree.
Because
The
I've had
climber,
some
you're very
s-
limited.
I've had some sketchy moments with a climber.
Oh yeah, me
The
too.
bottom gives out or the top, and it's like, whoa, your heart like sinks out of you.
So we,
You know?
I had a climber at this point, but I still like really wasn't comfortable with it. So it was like early September. We dove into a huge swamp. This is kind of it's like a runoff off the main mountain we love to pound, and it's back corner of the swamp. The cattails are like 8-9 feet high. And we're like, we can't hunt this, you know. But the deer trails in there, it was like a jungle. It's like a swamp hunting. The water, what got me, was only like 6 to 8 inches deep, so it was totally doable for the deer. Like they're not in there, you know, struggling, swimming around. They're literally going over 20 yards to a little bit of a high point, and it's a bed, you
Yep.
know. And it's just like it's good swamp country. So we found a hemlock, threw a nice fat ladder stand in it, and we've taken it down a couple times and actually swapped it out now to a little bit better one. But basically, we've moved the stand now 3 or 4 times since then. But this was a 1-year set. First year we put this stand in, the first sit too. It was like
Yeah, it was the first time going in there.
I want to say it was like the 6th day of bow season or like the 8th day of bow
Yeah,
season.
it was like October 4th or 5th.
It was early. It was
Mhm.
stinking early. I think it might have been like October 6th. But I got into that stand in the pitch black, in the dark, just like I like doing.
Yep.
I got up into that stand, just quiet as a mouse, got all set up, and mainly like my main shooting window was 25 yards straight in front of me, and everything else was like 50, 60 yards, and you're shooting up over cattails. Like,
Yep.
I had one window. It's basically it's a really good rifle spot, not really a good bow spot. They really have to walk on top of you. But anyways, I managed to sit there until about 8 o'clock before I finally weaseled the grunt tube out. Early bow season, I try not to do it to myself, but your curiosity always takes over.
Right.
I don't know. I always toot with the grunt tube here and there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's bad. Sometimes you tell yourself, like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. And then you end up
Right.
tooting on the grunt
Right,
tube.
look at
a
it.
couple
You know,
times.
what does it hurt?
Right.
Yeah. So that was kind of like, what is it going to hurt, you know? So I did a dull grunt, and I did it pretty strategy-wise, you know. I grunted once, and I waited 15, 20 seconds, and I grunted again, and I waited 15, 20 seconds, and I grunted again. I was spinning around on the tree, you know, projecting the sound around, and I finished with just one simple little buck grunt toot, you know. And it wasn't any more than 10 minutes. It might even been under 10 minutes. Like I said, it feels like an eternity when you're sitting up there. Splash, 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 right behind me. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a deer that's entering the swamp. And I got this big hardwood bowl up behind me, but it's all private. So I was like, most of the deer coming off there, they're pretty landlocked. A lot of the bucks we get on camera are coming off there. And I knew, like, he hasn't seen any hunters. So, like, he's coming in. We've been hunting pretty hard at this point. And splash, splash, splash comes crashing out into the swamp below me. And I was like, oh, you know, here comes the deer. And I'm thinking doe, you know, whatever. I finally got a little bit of a glimpse of him. And I just saw, like, the edge of his horn, just enough to go, like, oh, and catch my attention a little bit more. Like, this this deer's got horns. So then it's like, okay, got the bowl spun around. I'm starting to get situated. Like, okay, where's this deer going to walk out? Like, where is he going to go? And he starts to work to an opening, and eventually he stands in a nice solid opening where I can see the whole deer now, and it's not just bits and pieces coming through the cattails, just straight thickness. And I see a nice solid fork on one side, and it was a big fork, big fork. And I was like, that's all I need to see. That's all I need to see. And he started to turn, and he starts to come out across the swamp. And I'm like, okay, this is going to boil up just the way I want it. So now I'm really starting to get situated. I got the bow up. I'm getting ready. So now I'm starting to go through my head. I'm going to draw back, stop them, going through my lines. Like, okay, kind of planning out where I'm going to shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
He starts to open up, get out into the opening. Now I can shoot him anytime I want. I got out nice and steady, and I drew back, and he still was just on a steady walk. He didn't even hear me draw. I had all the time in the world. He stopped, looked right up at me, and settled right behind his shoulder. I do this thing. I like to punch my bow. I don't know if or punch my trigger on my bow. I don't know if this was one of those moments where it haunts me. But I sent an arrow down range, and it stuck straight into the shoulder blade. Maybe stuck in about 3 or 4 inches. I just thought, it's basically your whole arrow hanging out of the deer on the side you shot him on, with him hauling away from me through the swamp. I was like, oh no, I did not get much penetration. Like instantly knew I didn't get much penetration. It wasn't even like great shot off the bat. It was automatically knew like this is bad.
Yep, you knew right away.
This is bad. So I call Gilly instantly, like, shot a buck.
And Gilly was up in there, right?
Yeah, so Gilly, we came
I
in
was like
together.
800 yards, 900 yards from him.
I put him on a ridge.
Up on the ridge above the swamp.
And the swamp's kind of long and narrow. And he was kind of watching where they come off and just, they use it to travel, He was on a good ridge watching a popular crossing for the swamp. And, my deer headed right for him.
Literally went right by me.
I didn't even really calculate either. I called him, and I'm like, yo, I just hit a buck. He's hurt. He's kind of coming your way, but like I didn't even register like this deer could possibly walk by Gilly. And he would have to climb up a bank. So I was thinking if I really hurt him, he's not gonna go up the bank.
Right.
So he's telling me, wait, give him time, don't get out of the stand yet. So it was eating at me a little bit. So I, at this point, got down to the bottom, was looking for blood. And Gilly calls me, dude, just in a panic on the phone, like, your buck just walked by me, and I just shot him again. And I was like, no
Literally.
way.
On the opposite side, too.
So
Unreal.
we started, like, doing the calculations, and I'm like, yeah, it's totally possible. Like, yeah, of course, he said it was limping, so I'm like, it has to be my buck.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, I'm just going to follow a little bit of blood, but I know where he was sitting. I can just head straight there, and if there's not blood there, we can really go off of his shot.
Right.
At that point.
The blood trail went right there.
So yeah,
It was bleeding the whole way.
oh yeah. So
Would the buck have died?
No.
No. It was total shoulder hit.
So
he
Nate
bled
hit
out.
Nate hit on the
basically.
left side,
Stuck it into an artery.
and it went right in. No, remember nobody got into the chest cavity?
Nobody got in the chest. No.
So it went up into his neck, and mine went into the opposite side, almost identical shot.
Yeah.
Right into his neck.
We both just like severed main arteries
Yeah.
on either side of the deer.
I took the complete Hail Mary.
Well, how
Whoa,
far did he
what's going
go
on?
to get to?
Probably like
800 yards.
So it wasn't a main artery then. You hit a
No.
main artery and they dump in 40
no.
yards.
So then
I
he
went-
goes
it was quite a
another.
ways.
Then he goes another like.
And it was all uphill.
He was going for a ways.
He's going.
Yeah.
So then he goes another like 400, 500 yards, and he even like split up some. I don't know where it came from. At least we thought it was split up, but some big piles of blood. We're like, yeah, he's right here, know. And then we go another 200 yards, and we're right back to just
Specs.
little specks. And it's like, why? So then we remember. So we ended up. We jumped him once in some really thick shit.
Yeah, and then he went all the way across the road.
Yeah, he ended up crossing the road, and he went down into this stuff that we
Right.
like to classify as like Ohio country.
Right.
Yep.
And
So-
he finally.
We heard him go. Like we pushed him, And I was like, okay, like he
But
bedded
he was
down.
like,
so
he was
hurt.
bulldozing.
So we were looking up
Like he's going down.
how much blood a deer can hold, and like how much until or how long until like
It's really not much.
they bleed out.
Yeah.
And it really, I don't remember what we found out. But
I
it
can't
literally-
tell you
it
exactly,
wasn't
but I'm
much.
like,
couple quarts or
I'm
something.
like, whoa, that's actually not that much blood, you know?
And we're like, he's definitely lost like close to at least this much blood. We know like he's building blood up. His heart's still going, but like that's a lot of blood we've seen. So like he's got to be dead. He's got to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to be dead. So we gave him an hour and a half, maybe painfully.
Waited.
It's always hard just to like leave a
wicked.
buck.
Yeah.
Dive all the way back into this nasty crap, thick thorns, and we found him within 50 yards when we last jumped him, stiffer than a board.
He was
Yeah.
dead,
Yeah.
dead on his feet.
But
When we last heard him crash, he went down. He was done.
we gutted him out. I cut him up myself.
Yep.
Neither one of us made it into the chest cavity. It was the funniest thing ever. I actually found my broadhead.
Mm-hmm.
I was like in the shoulder pocket, like in the armpit,
Yep.
deep. Like I actually like shot the deer, or somehow my broadhead ended up in his armpit. Basically, it was pretty funny. But
No kidding. Yeah, well, you got him. That's all
Yeah.
that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes 2 arrows.
Yep.
that was
That's the thing with hunting with buddies, you know?
I got the first shot.
Yeah, no, it's first blood with buddies.
Yeah.
That's
First
the way.
blood, and it gets a deer down, you know?
Yeah, it's always first blood with buddies. I mean, that's
And who
the way.
knows if I actually, had an ethical shot. He
Well,
At
you,
that
you
point, it
mean
don't
a
matter.
lethal? You
Oh,
mean like a lethal
yeah,
shot?
lethal
Right.
shot. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Don't matter at that point. It's your deer.
Yeah,
no,
man.
no, exactly.
Yeah, we've had Gilly and I have had situations
Multiple.
like that. Yeah, multiple.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you hunt with the good buddies, it's bound to happen. And I mean, you know what? You are more dangerous that way though, because without Gilly, maybe you
He
wouldn't have.
would, yeah, exactly.
You might not have killed that deer.
I
so
would have to live with a wounding a deer.
wounding a deer, yeah,
Yeah.
which is terrible, and nobody likes doing that. So, in a way, hunting like that is, it's definitely.
Thankful for Gilly to being sharp enough to take him down. Help me take him down.
That's right.
That was a Hail Mary shot. Man.
Gillis.
I don't even
How many
know.
yards do you think that was?
It was 30. We range
30.
found
the,
it.
the funniest
But why
thing
was it a Hail Mary? Was he walking fast or?
He was walking fast, limping.
But what was
And
the Hail,
literally-
why was it a Hail Mary shot?
Because I just quickly okay,
It was just
looks
quick.
like 30.
Oh, right.
Hail Mary,
Yeah.
it was a matter of seconds.
It was just
I
quick. You
literally
just
heard
reacted.
a stick snap, looked over, and he's fast,
Like it was
limping.
it was instinct. It was
yeah,
basically just
instinct. I grabbed my ball, just drew it back.
Pop.
Looks like 30. And I let him.
Let him have.
I let him too. I'm not kidding you. The deer was walking. I literally let him, and I didn't. I guess I didn't have to because that's why I hit him in the neck.
Yeah.
The funniest thing is, too, is
yeah.
these are set stands that we set. And we weren't in climbers.
No,
you know? So,
yeah.
I so happened, one of the stands we set a couple of years prior to this, and one of them we set the one I shot the deer out of initially. We set that year, I just thought that was funny, it's having a set stand, just the luck of that. It's not like he was in a climber, sitting on a deer run.
Right.
It was just a stand that we put there. Anybody can really sit in it.
Yep.
That's
and that
awesome.
deer just happened to walk by him. Went up a hill.
Walk by you, then him.
We didn't even know where he was going. There really wasn't much bedding area where he was headed. It was just
Just kind of random.
yeah.
No
I think
kidding.
he's just getting out of Dodge.
Yeah, you're just hunting the swamp and you come by. Well, this was great, boys.
Yeah.
This is a good conversation.
Yeah. That was a good conversation.
Thanks for coming up and doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Got anything else, either of you?
No, I think I'm all set. I'm ready for 2024. I know that. We got
You mean 2023?
2023.
or 2023? I guess we're still in 2023.
You want to skip this fall?
Yeah.
You've killed so many big bucks. You just want to give them a break for a
Right.
year.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's taking the year off.
I'm
Yeah,
ready.
taking the year off.
We have
3-year
a lot
limit.
of deer that survived because of the whole 1 buck rule, and I'm just. I can't wait to see it. I just
Right.
can't wait
That-
to see them.
The 1
If I can
buck
find
rule.
'em.
The 1 buck rule has done us well. All right,
It has.
boys. Thank you. All right, guys. See you
Thank
on the
you.
next one.
See ya.